For me, what are the takeaways from the SVB collapse? First is, if you are the equity shareholder, there is no protection for you. No government is going to come and say, I will pay at least 10 rupees to the equity shareholder. Equity shareholder will go to zero very quickly and will not get anything. The second lesson is, the bank will be bailed out. Any bank, most banks will be bailed out simply because the government cannot afford a run on banks. So SVB bank had to be bailed out by the FDIC, Fed. There has to be a backstop somewhere, so they had to be bailed out. Did everybody have to be bailed out? That is very political, because most of the deposits were about 250,000 US dollars. So that they need not have been bailed out. According to the law in the US, it need not have been bailed out, but they also got bailed out. The advantage is SVB bank got saved, so the employees, the vendors, all of them got protected. The only person who didn't get protected is the equity shareholder. This is a fact of life. It happens everywhere, and this had to happen simply because SVB bank collapse would have meant collapse of the banking system in America. That can't happen. So SEC will get some stick for not protecting the equity shareholder, but then no tears will be shed for the person saying he took a risk. The fixed deposit holder also, the CD holder also took a risk. He wanted to get a higher rate than what the 4 top banks of US would give, but he got protected even though he took a risk, right? So very bad lesson from here is, if you want protection, take all the risk in debt, which is completely contrary. So don't have that learning. It's a wrong learning. Another thing which people are saying is SVB invested in treasuries, and treasuries treasuries fell in value. But please don't say treasuries fell in value. Treasuries fell in value because interest rates went up. Treasuries didn't default. This is not a default risk. Where fluctuation in price will happen according to interest rate is basics of banking, right? Banking 101 or economics 101. When interest rates go up, asset prices fall. So asset prices had to fall. It was as simple as that. SVB didn't realize it. The SVB board didn't realize it. That's very sad. One more thing is, many small startups had their account with SVB. I don't blame them, because here is the bank which is 40 years old, which means like HDFC Bank. So you don't assume that you have to reduce your risk by putting it to 3-4 banks. All my money is in HDFC Bank, and that's exactly how I think people react to it. People cannot be expected to open 5 bank accounts just to keep the other thing which people are blaming, the easiest person to blame for anything that goes wrong in the US is Donald Trump. So Donald Trump really liberated the banks from many of the rules and regulations. Now, just because some rule has changed, it does not make it right? Suppose they say in India there is no ban on drinking and driving. That does not make drinking and driving a very smart thing to do. So if a bank does not understand asset liability mismatch, does not understand the ferocity with which the government was increasing the interest rates, and they did not get rid of their treasury portfolio, I think it is just plain stupid banking, right? They didn't understand the basics of banking. So blaming Donald Trump, saying, oh, he relaxed the rules and therefore people behaved so badly, is just wrong. It's pathetic argument. I think the average American didn't even understand how much the interest rate change can hit. I've spoken to classmates and friends whose EMI payments have gone up to 2.5 times, right? 2.5 times is not something small. Now these are people who are flipping 3-4 houses, so for them 1 or 2 houses doesn't really matter. But if you're 30 years of age and your mortgage payments are today so high that you can't afford to make those mortgage payments, I don't know how you're going to live. So basic economics studies in the US show that people have to be far more financially literate. So that is true even in India. So blaming Trump is very easy, but it is also very stupid. Your EMIs will go up and interest rates go up. Can interest rates come down? I think at least in the month of April there will be a pause, because Powell, I mean, it's pretty much a joke. When Powell talks, he really scares the market. 1 week earlier he said, oh, we are going to have a 0.5%, 0.5% increase in interest rates. He created a panic, SVB bank collapsed, and there it is, right? So regulators don't always take great responsibility. RBI said there should be no cryptocurrency. The Supreme Court said there should be cryptocurrency. People lost money in cryptocurrency. Would you blame RBI? Would you blame Supreme Court? I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying these are the facts. When SBI banned it, Supreme Court in its great wisdom said no, people have a right to do whatever they want, so they can go and put money in cryptocurrency. Then they go to a film star who doesn't understand head nor tail. He advertises cryptocurrency, people lose money. Another actor advertises online rummy, and people commit suicide because they've run out of money, right? So these kind of things will happen. Don't depend on the regulator. This is a very important lesson from the SVB collapse. The regulator. So another important thing from the SVB collapse is Fed won't increase interest rates for some more time. That sounds very ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, but all these moves are going to help the de-dollarization, right? So de-dollarization is going to be hastened because everybody sitting around the world is saying, if the American economy is managed so badly, how long should we continue to trust the dollar? What America will do? When will de-dollarization happen? Will I be alive to see it? I'm not making any guesses. Maybe it will take 40 years, maybe it will take 30 years, maybe there will be a big meeting where people get together and say, oh, this is what we should be doing. But as long as people think that America can keep printing notes, we will all love the American market because it's a complete, very high margin market where people are perhaps too lazy, so what they buy or whatever reasons. But if you cannot get paid well, or if you get paid in a currency which is failing, you may lose the attractiveness of the American market. If you ask me, Indian pharma companies and Indian tech companies which are totally dependent on US run a little bit of a risk over the next 5, 7, 10 years about whether they should increase their breadth of the market. Should they go into other markets and all that? Answer is yes. Don't depend only on the American market. So these are some of the learnings. One is, you can't say that SVB didn't understand banking. Of course SVB didn't understand banking, but would you blame these startup CFOs from keeping their account there? I wouldn't think so, because if I were mentoring a startup, I will not ask him to keep the bank balance in 4 banks, right? And I would say, oh, keep it in SVB, it's a 40-year bank, it's a good bank. But I would have perhaps shifted to safer banks. So even in India, if you're a startup and you are with a slightly shady bank, or with a NBFC where you've kept some money or things like that, or anything, I would urge you to shift to liquid funds, good quality liquid funds, and a good safe bank. Whatever bank you're safe with, maybe 2 banks, maybe 3 banks. I would never have said this before this SVB failure. I don't think in India bank failure is ever going to happen as long as these are PSU banks. But I would urge you to keep your money in 2, 3 banks rather than just 1 bank, simply because if there is some reason why, like Yes Bank, your money was frozen for a week, right? So you don't want to run that kind of a risk. So 2, 3 banks. I would never have said this before the SVB failure. I didn't say it during the Yes Bank failure. But with the SVB failure, you do not know risk can come from where. Totally unexpected risk can hit you. Let us reduce that risk by diversifying even our bank deposits.